Hello everyone. We gather again for the grand finale PvP tier list, this time with a catch. There's a lot of thoughtful discussion in my YouTube comments, and my Twitch, and my Discord. In fact, some of the arguments made were so good that I would update the pinned message in the comment section of those PvP tier list videos with honorary rank changes for specs that should maybe be higher or lower than I talked about initially at first. But I wasn't thrilled with that. I wasn't satisfied with that. So I've gathered up all the comments, all the most common sentiment, the best arguments I could find. And I'm going to go through spec by spec and see which ones need to be brought down or up based on the community's opinion and argument as a whole. In fact, we're going to make something bigger than me, bigger than us, bigger than the collective, the ultimate, the grand finale, the most accurate, potentially, PvP tier list, using the power of everyone. And we'll go through halfway into the season and see just how right we were in a review of this very video, which I think would be very fun. So there you go. I hope you like this final idea going into the last day before the expansion, and come right along on this journey with me. There will be timestamps below if you want to skip around to the good stuff, whatever you care about the most. Let's do this. We're going to start in the top left corner. We're going to go spec by spec, change things if they need to be, based on your opinions. Frosty K. Looks like he can stay the same. Frosty K, a commenter, raised a very good point of what if the specs that it was traditionally weak to seem a lot better nowadays, like Fury and Feral, and thus that would bring Frost down because its competition that it generally struggles into is so good. That is a fantastic point. That said, the DK rework really helps avoid this problem. DK's powerlessness into physical damage revolved very heavily around its anti-magic shell, one of its most powerful defensive cooldowns, doing nothing to physical. It's anti-magic. But now they have a talent called Osmosis, where if you cannot break the anti-magic shell because you do physical damage, then the AMS persists the entire duration, which gives them a healing buff received the entire duration. And with AMS on a short cooldown, that's a lot of opportunities they're getting a healing buff. Pair that with Bloodforged Armor and some other damage reduction passives, both in Deathbringer and the DK tree, and you probably have less absolute destruction at the hands of Fury and Feral, though they are insanely good, so everybody will struggle into them, but I think Frosty K can stay at its S tier ranking, and Unholy, for all the same reasons, also gets that Osmosis talent, also gets the DK talent rework, and also plays very well with Fury Warrior, because that's a stacking Mortal Strike on the other biggest Mortal Strike, on top of heavy single target pressure from both of them and insane disruption. They're going to play along just fine. So Fury being higher, spoiler, than I maybe had it at first, probably makes Unholy very happy. Both of these will stay S. Assassination Rogue, I don't think a single person, not even one, talked about changing Assassination Rogue. It is probably just fine where it is. If there is an S plus tier, it would probably be there. AoE, turns out AoE Mortal Strike, AoE Garrote Silence, AoE Pad, a Rogue Toolkit, Kidney, AoE Shiv, right? It's all so incredibly good and so tuned for an arena environment that they will stay as maybe one of the best specs in the entire game. Rhett had some arguments either way, actually. Some people were actually pretty certain that this was a good spot for it, as its damage profile seemed good with the utility that it had. Now, its utility is extremely good. I did make one error. Judgments of the Pure, the Judgment Dispel, is no longer in the game. Though they do have Spell Bop. Sank, arguably probably the best utility button that most specs have. A get out of healer, jail, free card. Spell Bop, Physical Bop, Sack, Lay on Hands, Bubble, Hudge Blind. They have a good toolkit for arenas, for sure. But their damage profile is kind of up in the air. I've had arguments both ways. So if its damage profile is not enough to give it the pressure it needs for certain comps, then it's probably A. And if it is, then it's probably S. As of now, I didn't get a compelling enough argument either way, so I'll leave it as is. Frost Mage people were very happy with its placement. I think it's just a little overtuned right now. So Frost Mage S tier, for all the reasons that I've said, but fantastic CC, fantastic self-peels, good survivability, great mobility, and unbelievable, on-demand, incredibly bursty damage. Now we finally get to some changes. People wanted Demo Lock and Destro Lock potentially to be lower. Destro Lock, because it gets trained by all of these fantastic melee, some of which I underestimated, and we'll get to in a second. Demo lock, because maybe its damage profile isn't as crazy as I said it was from some people who have maybe been playing around with it on beta. It was hard to get a read on the demo change. It was just really one or two people, and both of which could still have the argument made against them that really, really fantastic melee specs that are almost feeling overtuned in their upfront damage does hurt casters. You know, casters, they're clothy, right? Generally, that's true. I'd like to move down Destro. I could even move it down another tier, but I'm not going to get too crazy. I'm going to keep Demo where it is for now. The arguments for Destro were really good. The arguments for Demo were less frequent. But now we're going to maybe move on past Prez because everybody considers it unequivocally the best healer in the game, and I won't talk about it anymore, to Mistweaver, which is going to get dropped not just one tier, but two. Mistweaver, unfortunately, looks like it is just going to suffer from the things I actually talked about in my first video. Remember, its S tier rating was only because I thought Fistweaver plus Windwalker talents was going to be really, really powerful, but the best thing that I read was that it can't do anything anymore. I don't think there is any explanation behind why it can't do anything anymore, but two people saying that, probably both of them saying they also watched Mistweaver streamers a lot. I mean, Mistweaver streamers are streaming Fistweaver, I'm sure. So if it can't do anything anymore, then Caster Monk is in a lot of trouble, because Caster Monk gets CC'd and kicked very easily because of the whole channel problem that I talked about extensively in the first video. So we dropped that 2 tiers down. The community has spoken. So now our S tier at the moment are these specs. These are the ones that are staying. Preservation and Assarogue and Frostmage being the key 3 that would probably be moved up to a god tier, as not a single person said otherwise. Okay, now we go on to the A tier. Havoc Demon Hunter, I had one very silly comment of somebody saying it does less damage than half the healers in the game. I don't know if it was hyperbole. It was very specific for being hyperbole, but I'd like to see these Demon Hunters and their complete ineptitude over their own rotation. I don't think I will ever be getting outdamaged by any healers in or within on Havoc. But my god, if I'm wrong, I will eat the most humble pie that's ever been made. Feral got tons of fantastic arguments for why it should be joining our friends in S tier. S tier, absolutely. It has big bite build, it has fantastic CC still, and it is just really hard to deal with a Feral on you, especially with the potential of being immortal with their hybridized hero talents. So as a result, Feral and its options and versatility and massive amount of comps it can play finds itself in S tier. The community once again has spoken. Sub-Rogue was an enigma, very hard to lock down. The damage profile felt bad from some people, but the control felt overwhelming for others. Maybe it could be an S tier. So the people who wanted to bring it down to B and the people who wanted to move it up will now have to find some agreement as it stays in A. Windwalker, looking like a really solid A as well. Maybe it doesn't have the team-wide utility that certain specs do at the top, but maybe it has a fantastic damage profile, very bursty, unpeelable clones, like I mentioned before. Mortal Strike is always fantastic. It just, and mobility, and it can get out and it can get in. It's just a powerful A-tier spec. Now we're going to look at Arms and Fury together. People said Fury is better than Arms. And I don't know if I should just move Fury to S tier because of all the people who talked about its incredible burst profile, just so much damage that healers can't, almost only the best healer is the only one who can heal through it. And I watched some videos on beta to try and confirm what they were saying, and I agree. It does seem to do the most damage out of any melee, and with a stacking Mortal Strike that can get to at its peak higher than any other melee, that is just an S tier spec. But do I have to move Arms Warrior down as well? Or is Arms Warrior just being worse than Fury a fair trade? It's very difficult for me to say because Sharpened Blade is still in the game and Sweeping Strikes Sharpened Blade is still in the game. So it feels really bad to move arms down to B. So I'm going to keep it where it is, but let it be known to those who argued this, Fury is now higher than arms and an S tier spec. Devastation got a lot of love right where it was. A good setup spec, really high on-demand damage, but nothing over the top like Frost Mage that would bring it up to S tier. Shadow Priest utility, swap, fear, stun silence, all of these things look like it also locks in a very solid A tier. Again, no Frost Mage, but definitely great with the utility that it has at A tier. Ellie Shaman got a couple nods for S, but it was really just in the bursty damage profile. It's really hard to say if that is enough, because it could still maybe get trained. Some people were talking about it's really good self-healing, though they did mention Healing Rain. I don't think I didn't even know Ellie Shaman could get Healing Rain. I could have maybe misread his comment. I think I'm going to leave it at A tier. Again, this is a spec that scales so well with secondary stats that it will unquestionably be S tier in every other iteration. And I could be wrong in the first season too. But I really like it at A tier. And I'm going to keep it there. If 2 more people had said it, then I would have moved. But another one we're going to stay with. Ardruid and Disc. I actually, outside of Mistweaver, I think my healers were locked at. Nobody talked about Disc. Nobody talked about Ardruid. I really think these are just good spots, good A-tier healer specs. They're not Prez. Prez is definitively the best healer right now. But they have their toolkit. Disc can snowball pressure. Ardruid has great throughput. Clone is great. Atonement healing is really high right now. Penance healing into shield is really high right now. I played it in solo shuffle in pre-patch. Now, we're going to lose some secondary stats, but shouldn't be too much of a problem for Disc, I don't think. And people on beta have been having a great time with the hero talent hybrid that Disc can have. So Destro moved down from S tier. And again, it could move down 1 lower. I'm fearful of that. This is where we have these 2 trees. Survival, people liked it B tier. It's a little squishy sometimes. Maybe it's not nearly as squishy now with the extra defensives that Hunter got, but it also has to like kind of pretend to be a melee at times, and that can get it cleaved to death. It just feels like a B tier spec because it's hard to pin down. We could see if jungle makes a comeback. See, Feral can play with anything, but if it really wants to play jungle, then you're going to see a lot of that, and you might see a lot of survival. People actually did not want Fire Mage at B. A lot of people argued for it at C. Frost just overshadows it in every way, and so does Arcane, we'll get to in a second, in their eyes. And I believe that. They had this Living Bomb Flamestrike build for the entirety of the end of the expansion, and now that it's just kind of dissipated, maybe they're just squishy people who get walled off by all the new class rework and hero talent defensives that can just handle their combust. And I was a little afraid of that. So we bring it down to C tier. Boomkin stays at a very bizarre B. Its CC is fantastic, and it's just undertuned in PvE right now. So it would probably get PvE buffs and then do a ton of damage as a result, and then be able to better utilize its great CC toolkit. If you train Boomy, though, it is in a lot of trouble. If it has to shift bear, again, it loses its its damage in trade for survivability. So right at B. Marksman had a argument or 2 for maybe up 1 tier, but it's still probably very susceptible to being trained. It does have instant cast stuff, which helps it get away from the long casted aim shots. This one's tough. This one's very tough. It's going to stay exactly right there, but know that I hear you, and maybe B+. Somebody even said B+ in the comments, and I don't have that tier, so let's keep it at B. Augment was an enigma. It was very difficult to lock down as well. And it's just going to stay at B because somebody in my comments directly said, yeah, Augment's probably fine at B. I've been playing it at beta. It's meh. HPL and Arshaman. Somebody made an argument for Arshaman to be a little higher, but I'm worried about the Acid Rain, Healing Rain toolkit that they brought up. Because ground-targeted slow damage abilities always seem a little lackluster to me, especially in a very fluid, very high-mobility arena environment. A Healing Rain on the ground, that's scary to me. Putting a lot of faith in that is just scary, very scary to me. And HPAL very susceptible to being swapped. Probably wants a little bit more crit on gear. But also has this fantastic toolkit. They made an argument for that at A. I don't know if I like it as much as the A tier healers, though. So I kind of like this chain of Prez and then to Ardrid, then to Disc, and then H-Bound to Arshaman that we have. By the way, they're in no specific order, left to right. It's already hard enough to put them in a tier as it is. Blood DK nobody talked about, and probably for a good reason. It's a silly, ridiculous spec, and I went on and on about its ability to just be nauseating, and as a result, it's in the nauseating tier on its own. Let's put it on the far right. That doesn't really mean anything, but it's just over there. And now Mistweaver was brought down from S, from community outcry, and I listened. Here it is, right here at B. Outlaw at C is probably just because of it's a rogue. People very much shared the sentiment that its damage profile is undertuned, that its cleave does not work in an arena environment right now, and that it just did not get the hero talent boon that a lot of the other specs did that blow it way past Outlaw Rogue. And comparing it to Assassin is very, very, very bad for Outlaw Rogue. So Outlaw Rogue stays at C, though, only because it's a rogue and has a rogue toolkit. Otherwise, it would be probably moving down to the newly named UG tier, where enhancement can go. Everybody that has played it, has talked about it, has watched it, and commented on it did not like how Enhanced plays. There was exactly one defending comment talking about the PvP talent that allows them to trade healing for damage a little better. It was like Storm something. And I gave him the nod to that. I mean, that does make sense. Maybe you don't lose Maelstrom stacks for healing, but you do just spend Global's healing, said another guy in the same exact comment thread, and then you're just healing over and over while they do more damage than you're healing, causing you to slowly die by wasting every single Global until you die. So Enhancement Shaman, because of the community around Enhancement Shaman themselves, goes straight down to the UG tier. Aflock is told to me to be brought up. Now, whether or not it should be brought up 1 or 2 was very, very difficult to pin down. There was some cool arguments like Malefic Rapture being off school now, so you can use it to bait kicks, and some instant damage that it can build up in the form of a big Shadow Bolt. If all of this ends up being good, then Aflock just fits right alongside its Fury Warrior teammate, where it can just have a pad comp with a heavy stacking Mortal Strike, or Assassin that is already S tier. And because of those two specs themselves, I'm pretty sure I will just give you guys what you asked for and boost it all the way from C to A. I'm still worried about it getting trained. I'm still worried about it not liking how much less haste it has in the new secondary stats of Season 1. But I'm going to give you guys the nod, and we'll check back in halfway through the arena season, and we'll see who is closer. It'd be hilarious if we all had the consensus that it was at B and it was just right smack dab between them. But let's give it the nod because of those cool interactions and how well it plays with Fury and Assass, giving it a Mortal Strike and Rot Pressure that it can benefit from. Okay. BM was loved where it was at. Just a low impact spec right now that will get all of its pets cleaved to death as well as itself by all of these heavy grinder melee that are just going to run it down. It could go down to the UG tier, but it has Mortal Strike, range damage, and stun trap, so it has those things where Enhancement Shaman is rocking double cap, a casted hex while getting absolutely plastered. We'll give it a little bit of a nod over the UG tier. Holy Priest, probably also okay where it is because of its good cooldowns like Form and Guardian, but unfortunately, definitely the lowest healer right now. I think this is true in everybody's tier list. Everybody has it, C or D. I'm going to give it C because it's not Enhancement Shaman. I'm sorry, Enhancement Shaman. You guys are taking a lot of strays right now. Actually, it was your own strays based on the comments that I got, but Holy Priest, an unfortunate C tier. Good cooldowns, but CC'd easily, kicked easily, and fearful that it just doesn't have a PvP toolkit right now. Brewmaster was given the nod there because of Brews in an AWC, and while I expected there to be silly comments on this, nobody really touched it. I think there was way too much talk about Mistweaver and Locke, which I agreed with and thus moved. But we'll just keep it as the Brews in bonus. Bruising bonus. I like that. And Fire Mage was moved down here because of you. The UG tier is now just a bunch of tanks and Enhancement Shaman, which uh, is pretty stupid for a tier, and honestly one of the funniest things I've ever seen. So the UG tier is a bunch of tanks and enhancement shaman. These tanks individually could all probably have arguments to be better because of weird tank-based utility, but they're UG, and so is enhancement shaman, and that's the final tier list. For Arena, this is what we've come up with together. There's a lot of the most common arguments and best arguments right here on your screen in the flesh. So take a look at it, see what we've created. Maybe we're really, really dang close. Who knows? Now we're going to go on to those BG Blitzers, as that video also did surprisingly well. And the BG Blitz bracket is just seeming like it's going to be very alive and very popular in the new expansion, which I'm so excited for. So let's go through these now. New timestamp right here. So you don't have to, you could skip to this, or you could just end here if you want to. Either one is fine. Not trying to waste your time. Okay, so Frosty K, absolutely staying S in the BG Blitz version. I have played it over and over and over. Now it is pre-patch, and look, we're all speculating, but it is on-demand damage. It is disruptive. It can win 2v2s. It can win 3v3s. It can take advantage of people that don't have Trinket. It can set up for its teammates. It has double grip. It has chains. It has undispellable 70% slow. It has a new go with Deathbringer or Rider, giving it mobility so it can get from base to base, which is so cool, by the way, because the one thing it was weak with is mobility, and it has a hero talent that just gives it an extra oomph to get out of a base to another one to make its high impact plays using the damage profile that it has. Frosty KS tier. Demon Hunter seems like its damage profile is a little less than I expected, but is still the most mobile melee, and I don't think it's ever stayed low damage for more than a season, or more than half of a season. I've played since it was released in competitive ranked PvP, and it has, I can't think of at least a long period of time where its damage profile wasn't very good, and its hero talents just synergize perfectly with what it wants to do. So I can only imagine that I think having Demon Hunter is an S tier spec. It has exactly what it should need to be an S tier spec. Sub-Rogue, outside of one very bizarre comment where somebody said, oh yeah, you can only capture a base against 3 people if you have another person there. This guy's a clown or something. You can go find the comment. It's still there. I responded to it. Everybody else was in solid agreement that Sub-Rogue is a fantastic S tier spec, except for that guy who, I don't know, the fact that you win a 2v3 and cap a base in it effortlessly with the CC toolkit is bad? Tell me if you can figure out what he was trying to say. I have no idea. Boomkin being S tier might actually be a little crazy. It is not having the damage profile that I expected, but I said, you know, it's bad in PvE, which means it's going to get buffed, but it's actually a lot worse than I thought at first. I think I have to just leave this here. I could bring it down to A and bring Feral up. I mean, this is a very hard... There are changes in this, by the way, to make, but these S and A tiers are going to be very hard to change. Boomkin and Feral could swap, but Boomy has a pad potential that no other spec really ever has in RBGs, but maybe it's not quite as valuable because the team fights are not as big. I'm going to... I'm going to hesitantly keep it here, but I hear some people talking, some murmurs. Let's see what its damage profile looks like as the expansion goes on. As the first season. We don't have to talk about the end of the expansion, just the first season goes on, and we'll definitely revisit this video soon. People really love Devastation here. I think S tier is going to stay very similar. Sorry for the spoiler, but there are going to be things that move, I promise. Devastation, people like that as well. It's so fast, and the damage is so quick to come out, and it can just kind of go somewhere and win something, and then go somewhere else and then win something else. Its CC profile is not nearly as good as Boomy or Rogue, and that's why Boomy should probably stay S tier because of its ability to just play on those maps so well. But man, it can kill an FC, it can kill orbs on Temple, it can fly around the map, and Marksman. can also do all of those things, except for the fly around the map, but it can shoot them from very far away. All of these sentiments seemed like they resonated with people. Marksman's survivability issues that it suffers with in Arena don't really matter as much in RBGs, where it can position itself accordingly to be near untargetable. Frost Mage people loved as well, the plays that people could make. They even talked about more things than I did. Blast Wave, knocking people into a ring of frost with a mass polymorph, being able to cap on multiple people at the same time. You can have somebody else click the flag. You yourself could click the flag. That's all long enough to click it on all players that are in the mass polymorph or the ring of frost. Wow, it just has even more things than I talked about, as well as all of its peels, and roots, and slows, and ice wall, and on-demand damage, and double block, and yeah, Frost Mage S tier as well. Mistweaver I'm going to bring down to A. People's sentiment on Mistweaver is so low, and it does seem like it's channeled around people who have been playing Mistweaver, popular streamers on Mistweaver who really feel low about the spec. It has the exact toolkit for an RBG, where but it's also the best FC because it has double roll port, and port is so good as a flag carrier. Can I even do this? The throughput seems... Dang, I don't think I can do this. I don't think it's possible, because it can double roll port with FC. It can set up a port. It can run down. It can port back up. It has revival. It has all these things I've talked about so many times. And while those maybe did not hold a candle in Arena, in RBGs, they just get even more and more accentuated to becoming so important. They can even CC cap. They actually have a CC cap toolkit as a healer. And then they can even sit the base because of things like ROP and port stun. It's hard to even say that it's on the same level as our Shaman. It's just more mobile and better utility. I'm just going to have to keep it there. That one was really hard. Ardurin and Prez people had no problem with. And then Guardian actually maybe goes down to A. It's not quite as important to have a Guardian doing Guardian things when DPS FCs are a little better now, actually a lot better now, with the buff that they get while holding the flag. Camping yourself at a node isn't quite as important. Now, they can still cap nodes and then spin it the whole duration until it caps over, but Deepwind Gorge and Arathi don't have these periods where you just need to camp out a node for 6 minutes, right? And that's what Guardian does better than anything. But being able to grab a node on anybody and then just spin it because they can't stop you is also really powerful. So let's just drop it down to A. That's not crazy. That's not hurtful. It's not the dominant force of a tank that it needed to be in RBGs, but it's absolutely still a playmaker of sorts. And that brings us to the A tier. I'm going to keep Unholy exactly where it is because it has the toolkit. It still suffers from only having the Rider mobility, though Rider and Unholy are very good. It just doesn't have AoE stunts. Frost has AoE stunts and Unholy doesn't. That's the only reason. Unholy is a fantastic spec. You should play Unholy if you want to. Blood is a bizarre spec, but nobody argued that it's immortal. It can spin bases, it can spin team fights, it can actually flag run, even though it's very slow. It is very tough to deal with when you're kidnapping healers or kidnapping range. You can take anybody out of the game that you want to, and whoever is their difference maker, you can neutralize their difference maker. You could even do it while pestering somebody else at the same time because your grip cooldown is so low. Vengeance is tough because part of it was it being the best FC by far with double leap short cooldown. Just so difficult for people to deal with. Some people just cannot catch them. But Assassination Rogue is, spoiler, higher than I said. It just is. Which means Assassination Rogue can kill Vengeance Demon Hunter with Kidney, Kingsbane, Deathmark, Shiv, all of these things, a full set of bleeds. It's very hard to kite unpeelable damage, right? And they're so good at opening up the window for kill for other specs on their team. So it sucks because I don't know if they belong at B tier. I just don't know what they do better than some of the other specs that they're above. So I'm going to have to. That was effectively not really a comment on the video, but more of an explanation from some people that some really good BG Blitz players that I've been playing with that have talked about what it means to be an FC and a good FC with this new change of how FCing works in BG Blitz. And as a result, I don't know. I think Mistweaver is like the best FC. I think it is. I think that's why it's still S tier. Assassination Rogue gets the nod to move up to S tier as well. Assassination Rogue is sub-rogue with out a little bit of Zubrogue's toolkit, but this unbelievable team fight 3v3. It's so good. It's so good, and it destroys FCs. Where I thought Sub was going to be the FC killer, this one was a great comment on my YouTube video. Assass is the FC killer. Sub needs triple cheap to do it, but because FCs, if they're a DPS and a healer, get stun damage reduction, Assassin doesn't need that. It just needs to do unfathomable damage with high stacks, and it does that perfectly. Assass is the ultimate FC killer, and thus it gets maybe its own S plus nod here. Wow, what a fantastic spec. If you're playing Rogue, man, you're playing Assassin, you're loving it right now. Afflock people we're happy with. Good toolkit. Traditionally very good. Rot pressure. Not super mobile on their own, and they don't really want to sit a base, but they could do a lot of things at a lot of places, and they can rot people as they're going from base to base, so people like that. Feral, as you just saw me struggle with the Feral Boomy, I'm going to keep Feral and Boomy where they're at, and that is a historical nod to Boomkin and Feral, honestly, their placements in Battlegrounds. I really hope that ends up being right. Ellie Shaman only loses S tier because it might not be quite as good at like skirmishes, 2v2 double DPS off point as some of those other specs, because, you know, you'd probably just go Ellie Shaman, but it has a great utility. Grounding Totem, I didn't even talk about Grounding Totem as an answer for multiple spells all at the same time from so many different players. Ellie Shaman is fantastic, don't get me wrong, but loses in skirms and loses in some 3v3s depending on what's there because of its ability to get trained by things like Rogue and Boomy that will be there. And everybody liked the spot of our Shaman, I think. I don't think I can give it the same nod as the other three S-tier healer specs because of all the utility and mobility they bring to the table. But happy for our Shamans that they have a lot of throughput. Again, if you can train an R Shaman, though, in RBGs, which I'm a little worried, they would have to move down. Okay, so Fury Warrior and Arms Warrior have monstrous, like terrifying on-demand damage from Fury, and then Arms is less powerful, but then has AoE Sharpen, which is even more powerful in a RBG scenario. But the problem is, only one of these could get the nod to move up, and I think that's Fury Warrior. Fury Warrior self-sustain is way better than Arms with self-healing. Its on-demand damage is higher. Its stacking Mortal Strike is really cool. When you put Rampage on 4 targets, you could get a crazy unhealable MS on them. In a team fight, you can win a 2v2 just by being self-sustained, heavy, and being impossible to deal with the damage that you do. Your mobility is good. You have snare prevention. People argued for Fury to be higher, and they got their wish. Congratulations, community. Fury is now an A-tier spec, and Arms will stay at B because it's just not all of those things. It doesn't have as much self-healing. It doesn't have as much damage right now, but it still stays there because of AoE Sharpened Blade, right? So it's got this really cool toolkit. It's just worried that, you know, maybe it's squishy, maybe it's peelable, maybe it doesn't do quite as much on-demand damage as Fury. And that's Warrior. We also bring Ret up to A tier. It could be S. It could be S. S is looking pretty filled right now. That's not the reason why it's not S. The reason why is because still in team fights, it's a little squishy, and its damage profile might not be quite crazy enough to be like a an S-tier team fighter or an S-tier one-shotter at a base, kind of like its partner in crime there, Fury Warrior, right next to it. So I think that's a really good spot for it. It moves up because people said its toolkit is very good for skirmishes, and I completely agree. It can bubble to finish off a base. It can help its teammate with lay on hands going from 0 to full, right? You're not going to have dampening and RBGs, so you can actually just top your teammate, and then you can spell bop them later after Forbearance, and you can give them yet another immunity so they can keep going, and you can win that 2v2 or that 3v3 off point, and you can make a difference. So really nice, solid A tier, maybe A+. A+, seems good. Survival, people were happy with. It's kind of an odd man out. It's just, it can cap a base, it can defend a base, it doesn't do anything phenomenally, it doesn't do anything terribly at all. It's like a jack of all trades. It can team fight, it can huck bombs, it can make range damage appear from its aspects, it can get in, it can harpoon in, it can disengage out, it has cheetah, it has a lot of tools. It's just a jack of all trades, maybe master of none. It can't cap as a base or defend a base as well as the absolute best specs in S tier, but it doesn't do anything poorly at all. So honestly, a B+ kind of deal kind of feels right for that. BM, unfortunately, has to drop. Its damage profile looks very, very bad. It's the ultimate base hitter, but the problem with BG Blitz is there's not quite as much of a emphasis on sitting a base forever, right? I talked about that with Guardian, and that really hurts BM because it doesn't really want to go out and get something. It doesn't really want to go out and go to a team fight. It doesn't really want to go out and try and one-shot something. It does not do very well against FCs as I thought it might because its just damage profile is just too low, and you'll kind of get away from the BM, and then the BM will get cleaved to death by the 7 Zugzuggy melee that are all S and A tier. It just doesn't feel good for anything except for exactly what it's known for, which is sitting a base. But you can't sit a base forever. The base goes nude on you, and then you're just doing nothing the entire game. You need to grab that base, float out, get something else, go make an impact play, and then go get that base again later. You can't just plant yourself somewhere. So unfortunately C tier. Fire Mage also was a huge point of contention because it's got this CC toolkit of knock into Ring of Frost. It also has mass polymorph. It can get bases in incredible ways. It can make a difference at a base very quick. It can still sit the base, but it's very squishy and bad at team fighting. People said we're loving Mage as a result of all those things, and that's why Frost should probably be S++ tier. But Fire Mage, I don't know if it uses that toolkit well enough by being squishier than Frost and being bad at peeling for itself, unlike Frost, and being bad at contributing to a 2v2 or a 3v3 immediately like Frost can with just a glacial spike from downtown, or a team fight with all the roots and peels. It just feels like Fire Mage maybe needs more coordination to be fantastic. Maybe people are going to break your mass polymorph and your Ring of Frost at the base. Maybe it needs to be in a perfectly coordinated group to be higher, but unfortunately, maybe it's not going to get that. Now, Arcane has more impact spells and has this crazy mobility toolkit that makes it the most slippery thing maybe in the game right now. It is elusive, it can get anywhere, it can do incredible on-demand damage when it gets there, and it's not relying about just one cooldown like Combustion. It can kind of do things all the time. It can finish people with barrages, and it still has that CC toolkit, so we'll leave it right where it is. We're also going to leave Destro where it is. It's hard to pin down. It might get trained. It could sit a base. It's still a lock, so it has Hellstones and Gateway and Port. It has that lock toolkit that people love in BGs. Can provide damage, does have instant cast damage. We're going to leave it right where it is as well. Brewmaster is silly. It can sit, it can hold, it can get a base. It has weird CC. It has decent peels for its team. It has a bad damage profile. I can run a flag very well, though, because of the same reason Mistweaver can. Double roll Port. Now, it doesn't get the healer/DPS benefit that Mistweaver does, but it does get tank abilities. So, Brewmaster at B. Augment is an enigma. We don't understand it. It's very confusing because it can buff people, but that's only as good as the teammates are around you. It gets cool hero talents that are powerful. It's just a nice B tier. And Vengeance we move down to B. Windwalker, a skirmisher, brings it up to B tier. Windwalker, by the people, by the community, has gotten a nod. It's a skirmisher. It can get to a base fast. It can win that base fast. It has crazy single target burst, and people who properly port in and out, kind of like a run and gun sort of deal. Get in there, get out of there. Flying Serpent kick in, do a bunch of damage, port out. Win those skirmishes, win those 2v2s, get to the next 2v2, win that one as well. You can automatically be a difference maker wherever you go, and that is key for Battleground Blitz. Why is it not higher? Well, it doesn't have as much team utility. Ret in that 2v2 can win it, and it can help your teammate win it. Windwalker doesn't help your teammate very much at all, just by how much damage they're doing. So Rets, Lay on Hands, full heal in BG Blitz, Spell Bop or Bubble, right? These things keep it a little higher, but Windwalker gets the nod bumped up, especially if it's in the right hands. Outlaw Rogue gets a bump as well, actually. It's faster than the other rogue specs. It actually has permanent movement speed increase from its talent tree, which is really nice because the whole point is mobility, and if you're a rogue spec with high mobility, you probably should be even higher than B tier. Moving Assass up to S was a no-brainer, so it does feel like having two S-tier alternatives makes Outlaw feel very hard to rate. But because of one argument, only one, but it was so compelling about its movement speed increase and subterfuge being a benefit and double vanish being a benefit. Oh man, it's got the rogue toolkit and it's a BG Blitz. I just don't think its damage is there, so it really can only cap with its toolkit, and it does not provide the Okay, B tier it is. it doesn't have a damage profile that allows it to do anything other than the exact rogue toolkit that it does apparently insanely well because of double vanish, subterfuge, and high movement speed. Let's leave it at B. Disc and H-Pal stay C for all their weaknesses that I described. Disc is a fantastic healer, but it can't move. And DK means no disc anymore. H-Pal is a decent healer and has a good amount of utility, but also a very good swap target and really hates being cleaved to death. And Forbearance is a hard thing to deal with in the high-octane War Within Season 1 meta. So H-Pal stays C. Shadow Priest. Got some love, got some hate. It can't move, but it has a fantastic utility toolkit. But it can't move. Can't really sit a base ever. It can't capture a base super well because mind control needs a partner and is a channelable CC, so you can't really do anything else while you're doing that mind control. And like where you could like sap somebody and blind somebody else, you'd have to like hold the mind control. You could fear them and then mind control, but man, its utility is great. It could be B. It could be B, but it just can't move. I mean, I had this exact same problem last time, and nobody could convince me. Some people hated it, some people loved it, and maybe that just means it should be B. Maybe B tier is the tier where Shadow Priest just perfectly belongs. I really don't think I feel comfortable moving it, so I think I'll just... Man. Stupid S-Priest, you're derailing my whole video. I guess we'll just leave it there in the I can't figure it out tier. That's not what all of B is. Some of these guys really locked in a good B, but Shadow Priest and Outlaw are so I can't figure it out. You know what? Shadow Priest probably shouldn't be on the same tier as Outlaw, but how do we change that? Let's move on. We'll come back to it. Prop Pally is C because weird. It's got fantastic FC, weird tools because of Freedom Steed, and it's got weird utility with queens and immunities, and it's got weird ways of capturing with Hodge and Blind, and it's weird. And it's not quite as bad as Prot Warrior. BM was moved here and Fire was moved here. Enhancement, I'm so sorry. It's clunky and squishy sometimes and trades a ton of important globals for healing that does not feel good when everybody else is just ram ranching you. Enhancement at D. I had an argument for demo being higher, but the argument was kind of based around a toolkit that it has that it already had in Dragonflight RBGs, and I don't think people chose it in Dragonflight RBGs either. I just fear that having a bunch of pets is not indicative to how you have success in BG Blitz. This one might be the only one that... No, I only had one argument for it, and I can't go with that, unfortunately. I'm sorry. Holy Priest stays a D because it is a priest and it can't move anywhere, and it doesn't have an RBG toolkit, and it doesn't have AoE healing cooldowns, and it's everybody agreed with that. Prot Warrior is bad, and that's it. The only one I can't lock it. I'm just gonna have it at B and C at various points during the video. It's B minus, it's C plus, it's B sharp, it's B flat, it's C sharp. It is impossible. We just have to wait for Shadow Priest. Everything else is a really good representation of our best. The community got Rhett and Windwalker up and Outlaw up and Fury up and Fire down. And I think that this is pretty okay. Thank you guys for being with me in this wild ride going into the new expansion. It's out tomorrow. I'll be streaming. I can't wait to see you all there. This has been so much fun, and I incredibly appreciate the opportunity to make these videos. I hope we did it. I hope we made the ultimate PvP tier list. See you around.